Good afternoon, good morning to everyone, depending on where you are. My name is Mark Larkin. Welcome to this first Keeping It Real webinar, which I'm delighted to be part of, where we're going to be talking about real-world evidence and rare diseases. Now, we have got a very distinguished panel for you today. So if you want to go to the next slide, let me show you my co-panelists. So let me give a quick word of introduction for myself and I'll pass over to the rest of the team. So I'm the CEO of Vitaccess. I started the company about 4 years ago. And as you'll see, we do a lot of work in rare diseases, real world evidence. And I'll pass over to Sam Llewellyn. Let's just give a quick intro to himself.
Yes, so hi everyone. So yeah, I'm Sam Llewellyn, Senior Consultant at Vitaccess and study lead for the CMT-Rete study that we'll be taking you through later on in the webinar. Yep.
Thanks, Sam. Xavier?
Hello, everybody. My name is Xavier. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer of Pharnext, a French-based biotech company since 7 years. And prior to that, I have a background in as a consultant and in various marketing and sales positions in the pharma industry, in companies like Alexion, GSK, UCB. Very much focused on rare diseases during all my career.
Great, thanks, Xavier. Filippo?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Filippo Genovese, and I'm representative for the Italian CMT Association, ACMT-Rete, and I'm taking care also of the communication on social networks, and I'm pretty happy to be here and to discuss with all of you about this interesting initiative.
Thanks a lot, Filippo. So if you want to go to the next slide then, please. This is what the program looks like for the next sort of 45 minutes. I'm going to give you a quick introduction to Vitaccess. We'll get through that pretty quickly as context to what we'll then talk about. And then the main part of the material we want to share with you, hopefully to give you some learnings as to how these types of studies work. Sam's going to take us through an overview of a collaborative real-world study that we've been working on with our partners at Pharnext, partners at the various different patient advocacy groups such as Filippo that you will hear about in Charcot-Marie-Tooth disease. It's a study called CMT and Me. Then after that, we're going to have some time for a Q&A. So as I'm sure everyone is familiar with now, there's the chat function in this system. So please, as we're going through, give us some questions, which we've got about we hope about 20 minutes at the end to share with the panelists. In addition to that, we've got some polls we're going to do. So keep you on your toes as we go through the material to try and keep it a little bit interactive. So I'll carry on then with a quick introduction to Vitaccess then. So if you go to the next slide then, please. We're an innovative research organisation. It's about 50 people in the company, formed about 4 years ago, based in Oxford in the UK. And as you see here, we've got a number of different parts to our business. This part of real world evidence is probably the biggest part of our business, but actually it's collaborative with other parts of our other teams within the company. So analytics, consulting, and that's HEOR, patient-reported outcomes, as well as localization. So these studies are typically, as you'll see, they're typically global studies. That enables us to roll out these studies into different countries and languages. If you go to the next slide then, and we were able to roll out this CMT and Me study using the platform that we've developed ourselves that enables us really to do flexible data capture. So we can do bring your own device data capture. We can recruit in different ways through sites, or actually for the CMT and Me study, it's through the community and through our partners at patient advocacy groups. And then we can get, we have the ability to capture data from patients, from caregivers and clinicians. So as you'll see when Sam takes us through that, we get the data into our platform, and then using dashboards, we can actually enable us to access those data in pretty close to real time, which is obviously beneficial for exploring the data, exploring hypotheses, and obviously doing publications pretty quickly. So if you go to the next slide then as well, and actually hopefully you'll see from the CMT and Me study that what we're able to do is created a consented, digitally engaged international cohort, and that's really valuable from a scientific perspective. So we do that, as you see on the left there, collaboratively with patient advocacy groups and key opinion leaders in the development and the implementation of the studies. And if we do that, we've got a whole range of things that can be valuable for, such as publications, such as submissions to health technology assessment groups, add-on studies, etc. You know, you can read the rest of those for yourself. So we think that actually this type of digital study is you know, it's not that new anymore, but actually from our perspective, we're still exploring all the potential for these studies, particularly not exclusively, but a lot of value there in rare diseases where, as you'll see, there's still a number of uncertainties perhaps in the way the disease, the treatment impacts patients in the real world setting. So these are data outside of, but complementary to clinical trials. Okay, so to go to the next one, we've got a poll for you. So how many people around the world are estimated to have a rare disease? Please select. Organisers and panelists can't vote. So choose your option there, please. We'll give that about 30 seconds for everyone to have to answer. And then we'll carry on. So when we're ready, we can carry on. Okay. So I don't know how we see the see the answer to that, but we'll get that back to you in a second. Do you want to go to the next next slide then, please? Okay, so what motivated you to come to this webinar? And here's again, let us have your answers, please. Learn more about CMT, develop your knowledge of digital registries, progress an active project in CMT, or something else. Let us know. So just give a few more seconds to answer. So I can give you the answer while we're waiting for that. I can give you the answer to the first poll. And the correct answer is 130 million. So, you know, I think a lot of patients have rare diseases throughout the world. And to give you answers to the second poll, well, it's mostly to develop, most people here to develop knowledge of digital registries. Few people interested in 14% to learn more about CMT, 55% developing knowledge of digital registries, and then 32% intriguingly, something else. So that's the answer to poll 2. Okay, so we're going to move on then. We've got one final poll for you. And that is, to you, what is the biggest benefit of digital registry? So here you can select all that apply to you. So multiple answers possible. Ability to increase patient recruitment for a clinical trial, filling data gaps, ability for rapid publications, or something else. So I'll give you a few more seconds for that. Okay, so I'll just give a few more seconds for people to respond to that, but looking like a clear winner so far. So we've got yeah, clear winner. Now these percentages don't add up to 100, as multiple answers are possible. So those eagle-eyed amongst you will spot that. But the percentages of all responses, therefore, so 47% ability to increase clinical trial recruitment, 89% filling data gaps, 47% ability for rapid publications, and then 21% for something else. Okay, so those are all the polls for the moment. Thank you very much for your answers. And I'm going to pass over to Sam, who's going to take us through an overview of the CMT&Me study. Sam.
Yes, thank you very much, Mark. So yeah, if we could go on to the next slide, please, Coralie. So just what's up on the screen at the moment is a quick overview of our ongoing CMT&Me study. So as we've touched upon already at the beginning of the webinar, this observational study is aimed at adult participants with Charcot-Marie tooth disease. CMT type 1A and all other subtypes are eligible to participate. The study is sponsored by Pharnext, and we have Xavier joining us today as the sponsor representative. But this is an international observational study. So the study first launched in October 2018 in the UK and the US, and has since expanded into other EU5 countries, so France, Germany, Italy, and Spain. At the moment, we have a cohort across the 6 countries, sorry, of 2,500 participants. And I've just got there as well then. So the study, as we will touch upon in the next slide as well, but was co-created in collaboration with patient advocacy group representatives, such as Filippo, and clinical key opinion leaders from each scope country, who then make up the scientific advisory board that I'll come on to in a sec. So the study itself, participants can enroll and consent to the study by downloading a bespoke app called CMT&Me that's available on Android and iOS devices. From there, once they've registered and given their consent to participate, they create an account on the CMT&Me app. They'll then log into that, and that's where they will complete a number of baseline surveys, and then at subsequent survey windows throughout their ongoing participation in the digital registry study will complete those. So at baseline, when they first register, we ask participants to complete a medical profile. So this is a number of bespoke questions asking them about themselves, age, etc., their CMT, including diagnosis, symptom severity. We also then ask about their medical team, the various types of physicians and clinicians that they see for their CMT. We also ask about treatments and treatment patterns. We also ask about their work or study, and also lifestyle, so eating behaviors, smoking behaviors, exercise behaviors. We also, and this is the sort of ongoing survey completion that we're expecting of participants, there's a number of PRO instruments as well, which includes ones that I'm sure you're all familiar with, such as the EQ5D5L, but there's also disease-specific PRO instruments, such as measuring the quality of life due to disabilities of the upper limbs, and also disabilities due to lower limbs. So that's a quick overview then, of the CMT&Me study. We also just included on that slide as well a link to the study on clinicaltrials.gov. So if there was anything specific around the study in terms of outcomes, variables, etc., that you also wanted to have a look at as well, the study is up on clinicaltrials.gov for you to have a look at. Okay, so next slide, please, Coralie. So as I touched upon there, from the very beginning of the study, we've worked really closely with a group of clinical key opinion leaders and patient advocacy group representatives from all of the scope countries. So we have all of those listed there for you, and I know several of them have joined the webinar today as well, so hello to you all as well. So just it was touched on in the last slide, but the scientific advisory board, as well as providing initial input into the design of the study, the survey questions, they do then serve as an ongoing advisory board to the study. We meet annually, virtually at the moment, but face-to-face ideally, and when we can do that again, we will certainly all try and meet up again. I think that makes for an even more productive advisory board meeting. But yeah, so the advisory board contributes to ongoing requests for data from commercial and non-commercial researchers. If we are proposing any updates to the data acquisition strategy, such as adding in new features, that's typically then in discussion with the advisory board. Many of the advisory board then are active participants in the publications that we produce coming out from the study data. And the advisory board, as well as part of these meetings, also reviews the interim analyses that we are producing on an annual basis at the moment from the study. So if we could go to the next slide then, please, Coralie. And so just what I've got up on the slide here then is, to run a successful digitally engaged cohort, such as the one that we feel that we have with the CMT-Me study. It's really about making sure that participants are engaged. So I've just got up on the screen here sort of some of the different methods that we're using to make sure that the cohort is engaged throughout the study duration. So as I mentioned, participants to participate in the study will download the CMT-Me app, and within that app then is a number of features that are aimed at study engagement, being able to educate participants and also keep them informed as the study is progressing. So for example, we work very closely with the patient groups and with Pharnext to produce quarterly study newsletters that are then sent out to study participants. So this includes any pertinent updates, to the app, to the study. It also includes what I've got here and what's sort of showing in this video that's playing down at the bottom, but data nuggets. So we produce monthly simple patient-centric data nuggets, so high-level data from the study, typically produced in using the near to real-time aggregate data that we have access to, and we're presenting those in a easy to understand way, and that was based on feedback that we had from study participants that what they really want is to hear about what's happening in the study. They're contributing data. We're asking them to complete things like the EQ5D every month, and for participants that have been in that, been in the study since it launched in October 2018, that's a long time. And I think key to keeping them engaged in the study is to show them the data that they're contributing and why as well. And also with the data nuggets, we also always include a call to action as a way of driving engagement. So if they see something in these data nuggets that they disagree with, they don't think that is necessarily representative of themselves as well, there's a call to action. Make sure that you complete this survey. Let us know if you think otherwise, and by completing this survey. So it works on a couple of levels there. Also within the app, so I mentioned that there's ongoing publications produced from the study data. So we've produced a number of conference posters and manuscripts, and those are produced on an ongoing basis, and there's plans for several more manuscripts as well based on various different topics. Again, linked to this idea of patients wanting to know what they're contributing to, we make the publications available within the app as well. I've also got there, similar to the webinar that we're running today, we have run a couple in the UK, and there's one coming up in Spain as well, and potentially Italy. But we do run webinars aimed at prospective or existing study participants, and that's not to tell them how to join the study, how to download the app, but it's to show them the findings of the study, similar to how we would produce an interim analysis slide deck to share with the advisory board. We present, again, not just these data nuggets, but actually a series of slides, high-level aggregate data that just takes participants through what we're finding so far, what are the key messages, and giving attendees for these webinars an opportunity to ask us questions as well. They can contact the study team at Vitaccess at any point throughout the study, but actually a webinar like this is a perfect opportunity for participants to ask questions, hear the answers in real time, but also to hear the other types of questions that an existing participant might be asking, or someone that's seen the study but hasn't joined yet might be asking as well. And the final thing that I've just got on the slide there as well, something we trialed last October as well, was a month-long competition to encourage participants to fill out their medical profile. So these are all of the background demographic questions. And we found that sort of competition where we, in the comms that went out around that, we sort of were giving, near to real-time updates on which country was better completing their medical profile, to try and encourage that inter-country competition between participants. And actually what we saw then was that this led to increased response rates, and we tied completion of those medical profiles back to donations to patient advocacy groups as well, which we heard from participants. They really liked that element of that as well. Okay, and the next slide, Coralie. Will just be a timeline. So I touched on the fact that the study launched in October 2018, but what you can see then on this timeline slide is not only how quickly a digital study like this can be launched in other countries. You'll see there that France was a bit late, but without going into too much detail, I don't think that's out of the ordinary for this type of study that's typically submitted to an ethics committee. But what you can see on the slide in the pink text is just how quickly we can, with a study like this, we can produce various different types of publications. So the study launched October 2018, and it was at an ISPOR conference. The month after, we were able to submit and present an abstract for the study and show some of the initial baseline data. And it was sort of, it can be that rapid. And, we're seeing now, I've got on there sort of May 2019 was when we'd hit the 1,000th participant, July 2020, 2,000 participants. And I mentioned that, as of the beginning of this month, we're already over 2,500. So, hopefully it just, continues in that way, and we will end up with a really nice cohort of CMT participants from across the 6 countries. And just, touching on something that Mark mentioned earlier in the webinar as well, it says there's sort of, 2021 and beyond. What we're sort of seeing now with the rich data set that we have now is we now have the option to explore other use cases for the study data. So, there's other publications planned, but there's also the option for various different studies that we might want to explore, burden of disease, using the data to inform economic modeling, linking the study as well then to things like early access programs as well. Okay, and then the next slide, please, Coralie. So we won't spend too much time on this, but we're just going to get up on the screen are bespoke study dashboards. So what you can see on the screen now is, so study dashboards are showing near to real-time study data. So you can see the 2,521 participants. What we decided early on in collaboration with the Scientific Advisory Board was, what type of data is interesting for everyone to see on an ongoing basis. So what you can see here is sort of overview, so it's various demographics. And what we can do is when we're thinking about publications, we can explore different things by looking at the aggregate data. So if, for example, Coralie, we just wanted to filter by Italy, something that Filippo might want to do if he wanted to go into the aggregate study aggregate data dashboards and just see this high-level information about the cohort in Italy. So we can see there that selecting Italy has then adjusted all of the other figures on the dashboard. So that includes things like CMT symptom level at diagnosis, current CMT symptom level. We can do further filtering if needed as well, but we can look at the distribution of CMT subtype, most important type of CMT symptoms as well at the bottom there. But having something like this available has proved extremely useful as well. Just for monitoring the amount of data that we're getting in, but also as I said, sort of to really inform the messaging going into the publications that we're producing in the study. So I think that was everything then on the CMT&Me digital registry. So we had and this is the final poll for those that have poll fatigue, but the question we've got here is, what are the typical consent to contact opt-in rates for digitally engaged cohorts such as the CMT&Me cohort? So this is essentially referring to the percentage of participants in a digital registry like this that are opting in to being contacted about other research, other CMT types of research, and the figure that we'll reveal as the answer is something that we're seeing across our digital registries, such as the CMT&Me study. So I can see people are voting. So just give it another 10 seconds. Okay, and if we could close that one, Coralie. So yeah, I can see that actually the majority of responses were for over 50, and over 50 is correct, but it's actually one better, and it's over 80%. So what we're finding across these digitally engaged cohorts, such as the CMT&Me study, is actually over 80% of study participants are opting in to being contacted about future research. And just to quickly tie that back to something that Mark then said at the beginning, and I know actually many of you mentioned in an earlier poll, but having this consent to contact means that in theory, those participants could be contacted about possible recruitment into a clinical trial. And actually to know that there's 80% of people, of participants that are happy to be contacted in this way, I think is really powerful and telling of actually the type of patients that are enrolling into this type of digital registry as well. These are people that really want to be engaged in research. They want to hear more about research and opportunities for them to participate in research. Okay, so that wraps up the CMT&Me digital registry. So I'll hand over to you, Mark, and we'll just do some panel Q&A.
Great, thanks a lot, Sam. Hopefully everyone can hear me again. So yeah, we've got about a quarter of an hour for panel discussion. So I was going to kick things off actually with asking Xavier, what inspired you to think about starting a study like this, Xavier?
Actually, when we contacted you at Vitaccess, we had already in mind that there was a strong need in CMT to generate real world data. Actually, they are in this rare disease. There are very few natural history study. So I would say that the impact of the disease on everyday life for patients is limited in terms of the amount of publications. So we wanted to generate this type of data, not only for Pharnext as a company, but also because we would need this type of data to put our drug on the market once the phase 3 is completed, but also because we wanted to create new data for the CMT community as a whole. And we also saw this as an opportunity to develop a common project that would bring together the patient advocacy groups, the key opinion leaders, and us, Pharnext. And we thought that it would be, I would say, very added value project, and not only for Pharnext, but for the CMT community. So that's the reason. And the reason why we went through this type of digital observational study instead of doing, I would say, a more classical observational study with a classical CRO. The first element at the time, because we are a small company, was the cost. I would say that it's far much less costly to do this type of study than doing a classical observational study. And second, maybe more importantly, is the flexibility that this type of study brings. It allows you to have access to real-time data, which is not necessarily the case with the observational study. And also the idea was to develop a tool that could be useful for patients, that it would allow patients to follow their disease and help them to, when they are in a discussion with physicians in front of their neurologists, to be able to tell them what happened during the last 6 months or the last year, because it's not always easy. Even sometimes when I am a patient and my physician asks me what happened during the last year, if you don't have an inventory or something where you have detailed everything what happened during the last year, it's not that easy to communicate with the physician. So that was the initial main objective of Pharnext, to sponsor this type of study.
Excellent, thank you. And then, Filippo, what was, when we began discussing this study with you, what were the things that you were? Did you need a lot of convincing, or were you very happy to be involved?
Well, we were definitely happy to be involved in this. Just let me spend a few words about CMT, or Charcot-Marie-Tooth, because it's neuromuscular disease, actually a peripheral neuropathy, which affects nerves and doesn't allow you to control the movements of your hands and feet, I would say. I'm a patient myself, and it's a kind of neglected disease in the sense that it's not well known. So there's a lot to be done to make this disease more known across the globe, and shed some light on the difficulties that patients are facing in their everyday life. So we thought that this kind of study could be an opportunity to definitely make things more clear. So we were more than happy to contribute to the study.
Okay, excellent. And as Sam was showing, it's an international study and initiative. And Xavier, was that something always that you had in mind, that this was going to be something that should be, I suppose, done internationally? And so, is it important to have those? I don't know. Thinking about the governance frameworks, Sam mentioned the scientific advisory board. Is that an important part of this type of work?
Yeah, if you allow me to comment on the international aspects, is because as very frequently in rare disease, you have some countries that have a national registry, other countries that don't have any registry, and you have some registries that are really focused on scientific data, genomics, what happened with the disease, but not necessarily focused on the impact of the disease on patient life. And the idea was to have the same tool in several countries so that you can really compare how the disease is managed, for instance, in the US versus Germany or versus Italy, and even in Europe, to see the differences. And so that was your question on international. On governance, it was very, very important for us that, and I want to stress that CMT-Me is not a Pharnext study. So we sponsored the study, but what was very important is that the study is managed. We give our opinion, but the study is managed by the Scientific Advisory Board, which is composed of key opinion leaders and patient advocacy group. And nothing is decided if the Scientific Advisory Board is not in agreement with it. Even the access to data, I can tell you that Pharnext does not have a direct access to the data. We are not hosting the data. And if we want to see something, we have to request the authorization from the Scientific Advisory Board. And that was really something that we wanted to make very clear at the beginning, so that there is no suspicion, in particular from patients that would register and participate in this study, that we do not keep the data at Pharnext and that we will not make it available, or we would use the data not in an ethical way. So and that's why the idea at the beginning was to put the Scientific Advisory Board together, not only to advise on what kind of data should be monitored, how to ask the questions to patients, but also to make sure that operationally it is really conducted in an ethical way, to reassure the participants that their data would not be sold or anything like that. And the good example of that is that if another company working on CMT in biotech companies or pharma companies wants to have access to the data, Pharnext, even though we are the only sponsor for the time being, we will not oppose to do that, because we think it's important to make the research progress for this disease. And that was really important from the very beginning.
Excellent. And I guess leading on from that then, Filippo, why do you think patients, I mean, we've been very happy that we've now got a cohort of 2,500 patients, but what do you think motivates patients for being involved in a study like this? Because, you know, this, as we've said, the data are very nice and granular. So from a scientific perspective, it's you know, really interesting. But yes, sometimes, you know, it's not. Some of the questions we're asking is not the most interesting ones, and some patients aren't. You know, can be a bit boring.
That's definitely an issue. I mean, you have to be, of course, regular in filling the questionnaires. Otherwise, it would make no sense. At the beginning, perhaps they approached the application with curiosity because of the new technology. But then they started appreciating, for instance, the knowledge base section, or the tools, for instance, the fall tools or the symptoms tracker tool. So they are starting to use it, just like Xavier said before, on a regular basis to track their medical happenings, what was going to them. But yes, we have to keep the interest alive, because luckily CMT is a slowly progressive disease, but so it takes time to measure and to see if there is a significant change in time. So we have to, just like we're doing today, organize webinars and keeping the community involved with competition and all the former initiatives.
Yeah, okay, so that, actually that's interesting. You mentioned and this is a bit of a parentheses, the falls tracker. So that's something that we wasn't in the study at the beginning, but actually it was in discussion with the Scientific Advisory Board. It emerged that this could be something, well, this was something that was important, and with this study, we could put in place a tool that could be useful. Do you want to say a little bit about more how that works?
The fall tracker.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
Yes, because we happen to fall because of foot drop. We are not very well in lifting up the tip of our feet. So, and falling, of course, might be traumatic issue. So there is a tool which actually tracks the falls, and then when you go to your physician or professional, you just report the time, and it's somehow a measure on how your treatment is going and whether the physiotherapy you're doing is working well or not. It's kind of an alarm.
Yeah, and I guess the ability to track that prospectively, not to sort of look back every 6 months and try and remember what's happened,
yep.
is easier and hopefully more accurate as well.
Sure.
Okay, Xavier, what's the, we talked a little bit about data uses, etc. Lots of publications already. What are the sort of future directions? I guess as you as a company, you're moving into your next clinical trial and then thinking forward to HTA submissions, etc. How will the CMT-Me study sort of accompany that as you move forward?
Actually, we want to continue the interim analysis and to generate data on an ongoing basis. First of all, to generate abstracts on the disease that we submit during neurology and peripheral nerve conferences. We have a publication plan, and the idea is during the next 4 years is to have a publication plan, a publication that is published actually every year. And ultimately, as a company, one of the objectives of CMT-Me, beside the scientific aspect and I would say increasing the awareness of CMT and bringing new data on CMT, is to generate pharmacoeconomic data on the disease. That is particularly important for us when thinking about putting our lead drug candidate on the market, because health technology assessment bodies and payers will request this type of information to better understand the value proposition of our drug. So the idea in the end is to use this data to to do some pharmacoeconomic modeling. I would say develop the value story of our lead assets, and then submit these informations to HTA bodies and payers so that we support the reimbursement and the market access of the drug on top of all the data that we generate with the clinical development program and the pivotal phase 3 that just started in March.
Excellent. Okay, and just perhaps linked to that then, Filippo, we talked about lots of these publications, and actually the scientific advisory boards have members have got we offer them if they want to get involved in the development of those publications. Has that been something you found rewarding, that the involvement in those posters and those manuscripts?
I would say so, because you can always say a word about the publication. I have a scientific background, so I'm trained to medical research. So it's always nice to, as a patient and as a researcher, to tell your opinion and let's say stress that specific aspect. It's rewarding, as you said.
Excellent. Good. I mean, we're running out of time there, I'm afraid, everyone. So I think I'm going to probably, in the interest of time, we said we were going to be about 45 minutes. I'm going to probably draw things to a close. Time's gone very quickly. So I hope that's been informative for those of you who have joined us today. As you can see, I hope that this type of research we think is very promising, particularly in rare diseases. This collaborative approach we think can generate some real benefits to not just sponsors, but actually to patients, to patient advocacy groups in the understanding of their conditions and their everyday experiences. So I'd like to thank Xavier and Filippo for participating today, sharing their experiences, Sam too. If any of those people who have registered have some additional questions, thank you for all the questions so far. Please feel free to get in touch with us, and I think the recording is available to those who again get in touch with us afterwards. So many thanks, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.